This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 129 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we were very excited to be joined by Elle Duncan, who recently left ESPN for Netflix and USA Sports. Elle is fresh off a trip to Taiwan where she covered Alex Honnold climbing one of the world's tallest skyscrapers in a special that was aired live on Netflix over the weekend. Elle told us about the prep work that went into this broadcast and hosting an event that has literally never been done before. There was no blueprint for this broadcast. It was something totally different. She talked about what went well and some of the things that she would do differently next time after receiving some critical feedback for the event. She also talked about what would have happened if Alex fell during the live event, which was a legitimate concern that they had to prepare for. Elle told us about the decision to leave ESPN for Netflix and USA Sports and wanting to challenge herself and try something different in her career. We also discussed the WNBA, her WNBA coverage, and her story about Kobe Bryant after his death that led to the Girl Dad movement, which is still very alive and strong today throughout the country. It was a great conversation with Elle, and it's a timely one after she just finished working her first event for Netflix. So please make sure you rate and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page and enjoy this week's episode of the Awful Announcing Podcast with guest Elle Duncan. All right. Up until recently, she was a longtime Sports Center anchor and studio host on ESPN. Now you can see her on Netflix, and soon you'll be able to see her on USA Sports during the WNBA season. She is Elle Duncan. Elle, thanks so much for joining us on the Awful Announcing Podcast today, the week after championship weekend in the NFL, but maybe more importantly, the week after Alex Honnold climbed one of the world's tallest skyscrapers in Taiwan. Your first assignment for Netflix was certainly a unique one. What was it like getting to see this take place in person?
Well, it was super wild. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
My entire timeline is now climbing videos and Alex Honnold videos. So it's my personality now. No, I mean, it was really, really cool. Just from like a witness perspective, it was crazy. I mean, Alex, most of us saw Free Solo. I had seen it before I got this assignment. I rewatched it once I got it, just to sort of examine it more critically and analytically. And I think there was a lot of trust that, Alex is fully capable of doing this and he wouldn't agree to do something this seemingly crazy if he didn't feel like he was in full command. But it's so nerve-wracking. I mean, a dude's climbing a freaking building, and but I think like in so many ways it impacted my life in ways that have nothing to do with broadcasting. Sometimes you meet people and they stick. And I've met a lot of people in my life and career. I've been very fortunate to travel all over and talk with all kinds of athletes and dignitaries and luminaries. And he's one of those people that just impacted me in a way that I wasn't prepared for or ready for. So to see the culmination of his dream come true, someone that I had really spent some time with and really started building an affection for, I was so relieved he lived, but also just to see like the joy on his face the entire time was like super cool.
Did you got to spend time with him prior to the event?
I did, yeah. In December, I went out to his house in Vegas and spent time with him and his wife and his kids. Just, trying to like get to the bottom of, I think, the question that was on most people's mind, which is like, what kind of person would do something this crazy? And especially on live TV. And so I was sort of charged to go out there and do that, spend time with him, figure out how we could contextualize his story during the broadcast and all of that. So it was really cool to build a rapport with Alex before, we went to Taiwan and sort of, did this big crazy thing together, just to build trust. And like I said, to like anecdotally experience the Alex Honnold experience, which is an experience in and of itself. And so it was really cool and really revealing.
What was your reaction when you were offered or given this event to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited. I think, the part of going to Netflix for me was about taking big swings, growing, challenging myself. I had, I think a really solid 10-year run at ESPN. I'm super proud of the work that I did. I think I got a really great handle on doing that work because I did it like every day for 10 years. And so for me, I knew this would be like a really big challenge, something different, a first of its kind. And so I was super excited to like right away step into a space that I had been, sort of craving, which was to push myself and to sort of, figure out like what my voice looks like across different spaces and how I could sort of lean on the experiences that I had previously, apply them, and also figure out, what the sort of Netflix approach is to things, because every company, no matter who they are, sort of have a tried and true blueprint. They've been doing things for a long time. ESPN's been doing this for 50 years, right? And so when you come into a place that's like a well-established machine, you sort of go in and you can color outside the lines a little bit, but mostly like there's a really successful blueprint for you. And I think with Netflix, all of these events are first of their kind. They're all really like different. And Netflix is continuing to sort of figure out like, what's the Netflix spin on how we present these really large spectacles and live events. So I was super thrilled to be given the trust to carry that, but also like excited to really try to push myself and challenge myself. And it was a challenge.
Yeah, so this was your first time working an event with Netflix. How was it from the production side of things? How does a Netflix production differ from ESPN?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there isn't like a tried and true Netflix production, right? Like this was Netflix in conjunction with Plimsoll Productions, in conjunction with Al Berman, another executive producer that has his own production company. So it was really interesting for me, sort of working with different production companies who sort of had different areas of expertise. Plimsoll does more nature docs. They've worked with Alex for a long time. They did Arctic Ascent with Alex. Al Berman does more live event type of space. For his career, he's done like really huge events, Survivor, and like all of these, sort of large model events similar to what we did. But I think the thing that's really cool about Netflix that I'm learning very early on, I mean, I'm like 3 weeks into my tenure, is that, they really believe in like taking chances, throwing things against the wall, seeing if they'll work, not necessarily having an idea if it will be successful, but like trying and just saying like, this is a great data point, right? Like as we're growing and building this thing out, let's try some stuff and let's see. Let's see, let's fail fast and let's pivot. Let's have notes and then like let's move on and figure out how we make this even better moving forward. So I think that's really cool. Just sort of being on something that doesn't have has a great foundation, but it hasn't really built out, what the sort of tried and true Netflix approach is to things. And I dig that. Like as a creative, I'm not afraid to fail. Sometimes you fail very publicly. And that's okay too. But like, I think the support from Netflix has been really incredible too, of just like, hey, like we recognize that we're all in this like newfound space together. So we're going to do this together and, see what happens. And then we're going to take that information and those data points and, continue to like give the viewers what they want. And so it was great. Like I was able to, for me, Brandon, like one of my first objectives was on sort of my first event with Netflix, no matter what that was going to be, whether that was going to be, Skyscraper or ultimately baseball, which is the first sort of Netflix sports thing that I'll be doing, was to just do the same thing that I did at ESPN, which was establish a rapport with the people that I work with, establish like my work ethic, my intentionality, my care, my creativity, like all of the things, my collaboration. Like I just wanted them to know that like, I'm a great person to work with. I might not always stick the landing, but I'm very well intentioned. And I just wanted them to know that working with me meant that like someone that was going to work their ass off, someone that was going to do, their absolute best. And I think that I showed that behind the scenes to the folks that I worked with that, I'm all in, I care. I didn't even see Taiwan. I was in the hotel, in meetings, in conference rooms, going over plans, writing things, researching. And so I think that, they saw that and that was a win for me.
Are you or have you been satisfied with the attention that Skyscraper received?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like naive to some of the criticism about specifically like the desk and, my role. And I'll say this because, look, I don't go to social media for feedback.
Yeah.
Even though I do believe that the viewer's voice is super important. Like it is important, right? Like that's who we're making these things for, is the viewers. So like their opinion and how things went is important. But I think as a broadcaster, to steal from Nick Saban, it's a little bit like rat poison. There's been things that I've done that have been really, really widely regarded and praised. And I go back and watch it with my own sort of critical analytical eye. And I go, ooh, I could have done this different. Or like, man, I wish I would have. And so I think, as a broadcaster, that's always my goal, is to go back, watch what I did, especially when it's something that I've never done before, and critique it, analyze it so that I can get better. And so what I believed I was doing was managing my anxiety really well. And right away, I went to watch the show. Like after we were done, we had some sort of postmortem stuff we had to do, bad pun, but we had to do some press conference and stuff. So when I got back to the hotel room, before I looked for any feedback from social media, before I believed the, countless people that were texting me, that was awesome. I was like, let me go back and look. And yeah, right away, I was like, well, I was at a 10. I was at a 10. And I was very anxious. And I think, that it showed in a way that I didn't feel like when I was doing it. There's something to be said when 5 minutes before you go on air, someone slides you a card of what you're going to say if a person falls off the building and dies. That was certainly not an experience I had ever had before. And I think like when you are in a broadcast, you sort of go in with objectives, and certainly we did. We had objectives of, telling Alex's story and talking about like sort of where he ranks on the pantheon of great athletes because of what he's doing at 40 years old. How we contextualize how a father would be willing to take such great risks and what that means. That I was really, really, really genuine in wanting to tell Alex's story, because we didn't really think we were going to be hearing from Alex very much. And I think that like the criticism of, me sort of talking a lot, and talking as sort of nervously as I was, right? Like I watched it back and I was like, I was anxious, and when I get anxious, I talk faster, and I'm sort of like trying to talk through the anxiety. And I could totally see how an hour and 45 minutes of listening to me, who started at a 10 and stayed at a 10 the whole time, could at some point probably wear on people. Like it probably would have on me too. And I totally get it. I think, one of the things that I'm giving myself grace for, even though I didn't exactly stick the landing that I wanted, and that I'm hoping that other people can understand too, is that this was a total test study. This was a test case. Like there was no blueprint. Nobody has ever narrated or hosted a desk where someone is climbing a building and could literally fall to their death at any second. And I think that, considering that if we're talking science experiments, I've been hanging out with Mark Rober. So now I'm talking, all of my vocabulary is now science related or like climbing related. But we were the control, of the science experiment. And I think like, oh my God, watching it back, absolutely I have notes, right? Like, and I think probably anybody in the production would tell you the same thing. We went in with so many unknowns. We didn't know how Alex would be feeling. We didn't know if Alex would play to the crowd, if he would, be all in, or if he would be like singularly focused on accomplishing in this. And like, like he didn't know. He's never free soloed in front of anyone. I asked him the night before we went to dinner, and I was like, how do you think you're going to like feel? Are you going to want to talk to me? Like, and he was like, honestly, you never know. Like when you get on the wall, there are times where you're just like, I'm not feeling it at all. I'm bailing, which we saw on free solo when he bailed on one of his attempts. He's like, sometimes you get on the wall and you're like, all right, I'm not feeling it, but I'm feeling it enough to do it. I'm just going to like focus, and I'm just going to I just got to get through it. He's like, and then sometimes you can kind of revel and enjoy and look around. And he's like, and you really don't know till you get up there. And I think once he got on that wall and we saw him playing to the crowd and waving, everyone was sort of like, oh, like he's like enjoying this. So maybe this is more of a celebratory tone than the stakes are so high, sort of the doom and gloom tone, right? And where we were doing our particular broadcast, we had like, there was like 1,000 people out there, right? We're in this like dog park right across from the building. There's people everywhere. We're obviously opened up to the crowd. They're reacting to everything that Alex is doing. Like they're, they're gasping and they're cheering and they're laughing and I think when I went back and watched that broadcast, I said to myself, I was broadcasting, I think, more for the people that were in that crowd, the people that were sort of like amplifying everything for me because of how they were reacting. And I probably, if I had to do it again, would be broadcasting more for the people at home. And I would probably be watching my tone a little bit more, right? And like my tone probably didn't match to some of those moments. And that I didn't need to sell the drama, like I went back and watched it and I was like, the drama is this dude's doing this crazy thing. Like, look at these incredible images. Like, that's really all that I need. I didn't need to paint that picture. But I didn't know that going in, And so like, yes, do I wish that it had been like wildly received and everyone would have loved, sort of like my specific role in it? Sure. But ultimately, there were so many wonderful things to take away from that experience. And I knew, like I mentioned, when I went to Netflix, I was going to be pushing myself. And this was a very tough broadcasting assignment. Like Alex said, like in terms of climbing, maybe this was like a 6 out of 10. I think for broadcasting, this was a 9 out of 10. And that's coming from someone that's done a lot of different kinds of broadcasting. It was incredibly difficult. And, I would love another crack at it to try to, based on everything that I've learned. But I'm still very proud of like what we put together and really proud of the team.
How is preparing for a broadcast that there is no, like you mentioned, there's no blueprint? Like this isn't an NFL or a basketball broadcast where you have thousands or millions of examples of what to or what not to do. This is something that is totally new and hasn't been done before.
Well, I mean, it's tough because exactly like there's not, you can sort of a lot of times, right? When we're talking about pregame shows and stuff, we're all just like sort of reinventing the wheel anyway. And you can sort of put your stink or your funk on it and make it you and make it unique. But ultimately, they kind of all follow the same blueprint, right? Your table setting, you do a pregame show, you get it to the game, you do interviews, this was different because again, like nobody knew going in how this would feel. Nobody knew like how much we were going to be using play by play, how much we'd be using, we went in with a plan. And also with the understanding that like plans change and in the moment it's live TV, you've got to be flexible and nimble and like all of those things. But I think the preparation was just planning for like 30 different things, apart from him falling, which was the thing that no one wanted to have to discuss, but certainly was a topic of conversation because there was a reality. And I think it was just kind of going, okay, we've got all of these things, all of these elements, we had packages that we never ran, we had packages that explained some of the challenges that were, facing Alex. That would have given people a break from my voice that we didn't end up using in the moment because, the producers are feeling it in the moment and they're going, I don't think we need this, or we're moving things around. So it was really about a ton of preparation so that if we did lose things that I could contextualize. So like when we lost the package about the rings, right? It was sort of up to me to sort of share why they were tricky or what Alex sort of shared about those things. And it was, so it was just like, being prepared for the unknown is really tough. And sort of just like having to throw things at the wall and go, okay, this isn't working in the moment. This is working in the moment. Like lay out here, don't lay out here, talk through this. Alex's mic was open the entire time. So we knew we'd get some like sort of dirty, that happens. Like we knew we'd get some sort of dirty crosstalk. We didn't know how much he would talk, how little, like how loquacious he would be, how much he'd want to spend talking with us. And he was super into it and open with it. So we kind of tried to pivot. We would try to be respectful and lay out when we heard Alex talking so that people could hear what he had to say. We wondered, like, there's a part of the climb that's these, 10 bamboo boxes and he's doing the same thing over and over and over and over. Would that at some point get monotonous enough that, the audience at home would want to hear about something else when it came to Alex? So these were all things that we were sort of wondering ahead of time that we were just really reacting to in real time. So it was a lot of reacting and, trying to weave different voices in. But yeah, it was just, it's, it's the unknown, I think that can be really scary. And I think sometimes can scare people away from wanting to take big swings and be challenged. And like, if I'm the face of an experiment that people feel could have gone better, I'm okay with that, because Brandon, like the truth is, when things go really, really well and people love broadcasts, right? The on-air talent get all the credit. And so I think it's totally fair that when things don't go as people maybe had hoped that they would, that the on-air talent, and that's me as the host, takes all the responsibility. But I'm so proud of, like, I thought Seth Rollins was great. I thought like his voice as the everyman was awesome. Emily Harrington, that is one of her best friends that was on that building. And it was awful to for her to watch that, and she still found a way to like talk about Alex, to be a professional. Like, she was in such an unenviable position. I'm so proud of her, and like Mark Rober, I thought that like the science of it all, I thought it was really interesting. Like my kids are 5 and 7. They love Mark Rober. They love that aspect of it, learning about the different elements of the building, or like what makes this different. I thought there was some really great things that I'm so proud of from that broadcast. And so, yeah, I'm disappointed that I personally didn't stick that landing, but ultimately, like, I don't want people to lose the forest through the trees. Like, it was a very, very large undertaking logistically as well. And I hope that anything that happened on the dust doesn't take away from how beautiful it was, like how beautifully shot it was, the incredible feat that he was doing, and ultimately the goal of what can you take away from watching Alex Honnold climb, which is that, as he said, life is finite. And if you have an opportunity in your life to do something that scares you and challenges you and pushes you, that you should do it, because we have so little time. And that to me was a success. I think we showed all that. We showed who Alex was.
What was the plan if Alex did fall? And what was it also like, the fact that you had to be preparing for that to be something that actually could happen?
Well, hence all the nerves. I mean, listen, I've never been a part of a broadcast where it wasn't just an afterthought that someone could be severely hurt or die. Like, it was at the forefront, just because we knew the reality. And again, I think everyone was really optimistic because, like, anyone that knows Alex and knows his skill set knows that, like, technically this was not a difficult climb for him. But again, there's so many other things, right? He'd never done this before. The distraction of the crowd would, like, walking by a window with people peering at him and waving, throw him off. Like, there was so much, we're in Taiwan. Like, there's earthquakes. There was 3 earthquakes when we were there, And so there was just so many mitigating factors. And so you're trying to, like, have some fun with this, entertain, tell people about Alex, all under the auspices that this man could die. And so I had a card on my lap that basically was like, like, we've experienced, a fall, and we're going to get off air now, and we will update you as soon as we can on Alex's condition. Like, they were going to cut away. We were on a delay. They were going to cut away to something very wide so that we obviously would not watch him fall. And then I was going to pop on camera and I was going to make that statement, and then we were going to get off air. And so, yeah, I think, like, you never know until you're in the moment how you'll sort of handle or manage that anxiety. And I think for me, it was very evident that, like, I was in a heightened situation that was, of course, amplified by, like, everything that was happening around me and all of the moving parts and all the logistics. So it was definitely very interesting, but there was a plan.
Did Alex say afterwards if there were any close calls or moments where he thought he might fall?
No. He did say he got more tired than he thought. Like, he was prepared to be tired, because when you do those, as I've learned, sort of, with the climbing and entrenching myself in the climbing world, that when you do the same move over and over and over, the risk is that you get something called the pump, which is this buildup of lactic acid. And anybody knows what that feels like when they run a little bit and they're like, imagine that in your arms and your hands, like something that you obviously need to climb this building successfully. And so I think he was, like, prepared that he would be tired. He knew it. He's a pro. He's been doing this 30 years. But even he was like, it's kind of, my arms are pumped. Like that was kind of tough. He had never done, he had done like test climbs where he would do different segments and things like that. I don't believe he had ever done the full sort of test run from bottom to top. It had rained all week in Taiwan. So there was multiple times where he tried to do these sort of test runs. And we were doing these rehearsals where we were going to work on blocking and timing. And we weren't able to do any of that because it rained and he wasn't able to climb the building. So we lost some valuable opportunities there as well. But I think he had like such a blast. I asked him like the showmanship part, right? Like even people that know you are like, who is this Alex, right? And he was like, man, it was so surreal. And he was like, when I really leaned into the spectacle part of it, at first he thought that might be the worst part of it. And I think that when he really leaned into the spectacle part of it and like took it all in, that when you looked down from the building, you could see the crowds. There was thousands of people that were there and hundreds more inside the building. And I think once he really was like on the wall and could appreciate the joy of that, he was fine. And when he did the bat hang on the rings where he hung from just his legs and didn't use his arms, I was like, oh, he's so feeling this. Like it was so unnecessary probably, but like the showman in him was like, if you weren't already anxious enough. And I thought that was really, really cool to just see him sort of come alive and be on this big playground. His wife said that, right? Like, it's like watching a kid on a giant playground and the joy that they get. And that really came across.
So are you eager to keep doing things like this? Or were there moments where you were just kind of like, be a lot easier if I was just hosting Sports Center right now?
Absolutely not. Like, of course I'm eager to do more stuff like this. That's the point, is that like, you have to push yourself and you have to try. I'm a baseball girly and my dad's always reminded me throughout my life, when I've had like missteps or miscues, he's like, even the best hitters bat 300, 350, right? Like, you're not going to bat 1,000. You are not going to nail it especially when you're doing something outside of your comfort zone, a bit outside the box. And in particular, you couple it with, it was outside of my comfort zone. It was outside of everyone's comfort zone. No one's ever done this. Like literally nobody has ever narrated a guy climbing a building. So I think when you compound all of those things, like, of course there's going to be some hiccups and some bumps in the road, but like I have the spine for it, Brandon, like I know that I'm going to be experimenting in front of the world and there's going to be some good and some bad and some other with that. But I'm completely unafraid, and like I'm charged to get better. Nobody is more critical of themselves than me. I want to be, a host that can do everything. And so I'm going to continue to push myself and prove that like I can take notes, I can self-correct, I can grow. These are all data points to steal from climbing. And next time I do something like this, although I don't know that I'll ever do anything like this again, I mean, like who will? I'll have more data points that I'll go in with and more information that I'm working with.
10 years ago when you got to ESPN, could you have ever imagined that you were going to willingly leave ESPN to go to Netflix?
No, definitely not. I mean, Netflix wasn't involved in sports at the time.
Yeah.
I was genuine when I said that all I ever wanted was to work at ESPN. And like, that was always the goal and the dream from when I was a teenage girl. So getting there felt like the culmination of like my lifelong dream. And I foresaw, sort of beginning and ending my national career there. But things change, through your life and you evolve as a person and the things that you want and desire begin to change and grow. And I also never thought that I would leave ESPN because I never thought that I would get an opportunity like this, to be real. This is it's not even sort of, it's an incredibly unique position and one that's like never like been available before. And so when you're presented with another option, sometimes it makes you go, interesting. So do I do this thing that I'm currently doing now because I feel like it's the only thing I can do? Or do I pursue something that, is a new opportunity to sort of look at what it could be? And I was very curious. And so the curiosity led me to making, a really big change. The work-life balance part of it was key. I mean, Brandon, like how many people in the world, if you looked at them and said, we'll pay you more and you can work a lot less, like they're gonna probably take it. They're probably gonna take it. And so it was just the combination of all of those things. It really was an amalgamation of all of these like incredible timing, and things that I had been thinking and putting out into the universe. And they all came together in sort of this perfect storm at this perfect time for me to make the move.
What will you miss about working for ESPN?
The people, I love them. In fact, I'm going like this Friday, I'm going out with my old show group just because I'm like, it's been a month. I miss y'all. Let's go get drinks. I love the people at ESPN. I really do. They're amazing. And the consistency of, you know, if you're having a good day, a bad day, like whatever it is, a familiar situation. Sometimes familiarity feels really great. I am a creature of habit. You know, I like consistency and all of those things. And I think that, you know, there is definitely a part of me at time that misses that. But then I remember that same sort of consistency monster is the same thing that drove me to try something new, you know, and that I felt I was lulling myself to sleep a little bit. And that I was, you know, sort of leaning on what I had already done, and that wasn't going to push me and force me to grow. So, but the people, man, I'm going to miss working with Dre and Shanae. You know, they're going to do College Game Day this weekend with Christine, and they're going to kill it. And it's going to be great. I love Christine. They couldn't have picked a better person to step into that role. But the FOMO of like not being at the women's tournament and like not being at the national championship, like that stuff is, you know, that stings. But I made peace with the decision when I made the decision, and, you know, I stand by it. There's no regrets. I feel great about it. But I love the people at ESPN.
How did you like doing First Take and getting to debate with Stephen A. Smith?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's always great again, right? Like that to me at the time was like a move to push myself and do something different. I had always been hosting and asking other people the questions. And so sort of being put in the position where the question was being asked to me, it was great. You know, the research, the making sure that your point is like tangible and cogent, using information to like back it up, playing chess. You know, when I would prepare, I would be like, what do I think Stephen A is going to say here? And then what would be my counter? And then if he counters with that, like it was like chess. And I loved that. I loved how prepared I had to be to go toe to toe with like the best debater in sports. And I, you know, and I was proud of the opportunity. I was grateful for the opportunity to Stephen A and the First Take crew that they saw someone that by title had Sports Center anchor, and still thought outside of the box and thought like, we think you have additive value as a opinionist, and we want to give you a platform to do it. And so it was super cool. It's crazy though. It's crazy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so I give a lot of credit to everyone that's on the show that does all the work every single day to, for 2 hours, debate things, and need to be able to back them up with like evidence and to show their acumen. It's tough.
Was there anything that you wanted to do at ESPN that you didn't get to do, a job or a role there?
I think, you know, football has always been my favorite sport. Always. I'm a Southern girl. Like we get it honest. It's in our DNA. I would have loved to have done a little bit more in the football space. It was kind of a goal for the whole time I was there to like do something to contribute, you know, specifically towards football, and not in like a Sports Center way, but like in a, you know, let me show like my knowledge and my love of football and my passion for football. But, you know, that's the thing of working at a place like ESPN is that like, there's so much talent, you know, like football is so well stocked with talent, you know, and it's like, you can understand like why I was never really able to permeate that bubble. You know, they've got Laura Rutledge, like she's incredible. You know, they've got so many amazing talent. Everybody who's a big name at ESPN wants to be involved in football, right? And so I understand the totem pole and sort of how it works, and these people that had worked there for a long time, there were legacy names that were involved in that space. And so I never took it personally or anything like that, but it was definitely one of those things where I would have loved to be a little bit more, you know, involved in the specific football side of things, just because it is my favorite sport and always has been.
When did you decide that you wanted to work in sports media?
Man, I was a failed actress. I was a theater major in college. My theater teacher was like, you shouldn't get a degree in theater. That's like weird. It's not going to get you a job. So I switched to mass communications with a broadcasting degree. And after a year of college, I was like, I still got this acting bug, right? Like I've been acting my whole life in theater and stuff. Like I still got this acting bug. So I moved to LA during pilot season because no one's ever done that. I ran out of money after 6 months. I got no jobs, no agent. So I came back, you know, tail tucked. And I was like, you know, I realized I didn't want to play someone else for a living. I wanted to be myself for a living. And sports had always been, a North Star for me. I loved Robin Roberts growing up. I loved ESPN. I loved Stu Scott. And I thought, maybe that's what I want. Like maybe I want to be me talking about something that I love, sports. And so that's kind of like where I sort of started focusing specifically on sports. Got a job doing sports talk radio. Wasn't even a job. I wasn't paid. They called it an internship so that they could get away with not paying me. And it kind of grew from there. But it was by failure, which is why I'm such a believer in plan B. Whenever people are like, plan A or bust, like no plan B. I'm like, that's bullshit. You should have a plan B and C and D. Like you should have a lot of different plans so that you can pivot when something's not working for you. And acting wasn't working for me. And I wanted to try broadcasting and, seems to have worked out all right.
Who have been some of your mentors?
Oh, wow. Mentors is interesting because I have had people in my life that have given me a lot of counsel, and a lot of advice. And I sort of think of the totality of those people as one big giant mentor. I don't have like one specific person. I don't have a Mr. Miyagi who like took me under his wings. I have people who all along my path and journey gave me a shot, gave me an opportunity, believed in me when there was no evidence to why they should, held me accountable, told me like when I was doing right and wrong. And so I think there's just been a collection of people throughout my life who have helped usher in each stage of my life by providing something, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just like a person to text you and be like, I know that was hard and you did amazing, right? Which is like what I'm getting a lot of this week. But no one specific mentor so much as just a million people who have at some point been acquaintances, have since become family or friends, bosses, all kinds of people that have really poured into me.
How have opportunities for women working in sports media changed since you were trying to break into the business to now?
I mean, I could never have conceived when I was trying to break into the business, Amina Kimes, right? Like a woman who never played football, who is one of the, if in my opinion, the like leader of incredible analysis. She's like all of the things that I think little girls dreamed of when they fell in love with sports in spaces that they couldn't necessarily play. And so I love seeing someone like Amina Kimes. And I think that's what it is, expansion of role. There was two options when I was coming up: sideline, anchor. That's it. And so to see like women content creators, to see women writers, to see women analysts and opinionists, to see women being bold and unafraid to give their opinion, knowing that they're going to get dismissed by the inevitable, how would you know, you never played, and still being willing to like go out on a limb and say how they feel. It's so inspirational. And it's something that like this generation of young women, it will be their only reality. But it was not my reality, which is why I'm just absolutely blown away by seeing it.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier how you were excited for the opportunity to go on First Take so that it would be somebody asking you the questions as opposed to you asking the questions. Were you always comfortable giving your opinions on air versus just kind of delivering the news, or did you have to kind of grow into that?
I was always fine with giving opinions. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not lacking in opinions. I think like the art to it, Brandon, is that I am okay with offering my opinion because I am okay with 100% pivoting and going, oops, that was wrong. Like I'm okay with being like, man, that was a bad opinion, right? Like I hold myself accountable in a way that like, and then there's some opinions that people didn't agree with that I stand by, but I was never, I think a lot of women have opinions. It's whether they have the courage to stand on those opinions or the courage to pivot and go, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Presented with new information, I was wrong. And I think in general, there's just this hesitance to like eat crow and go, wow, I fucked that up, right? Like there's like it's people are so hesitant to admit that they were wrong. And I am so not afraid to admit that I was wrong, or to say I took a snap judgment, or to say I didn't see it from a larger view. Like I'm so okay with that. And I also am okay with giving opinions because I know how researched I am. And I know that like I don't ever pull anything out of my ass. Like I am getting as much, proof and evidence to back up my opinion as possible. And on top of that, I'm just a fan. I'm a fan, and I've been a lifelong fan of sports for my entire life. And so like if I have an opportunity and a platform to like talk about it, I'm going to take it every single time.
Were you always okay with the criticism that comes with giving opinions, especially as a woman in sport?
Yeah,
Sports
I
media?
mean, yeah, it's just the cross that you bear. Like
Yeah.
it's okay, and it's fine. I'm not in general averse to criticism. I do think some of it's not warranted, and I do think some of it is warranted. But I think like in general, I'm not swayed by how other people view me, simply because, and it's not because I think I'm perfect. I know that I'm not. It's because I am the most critical of myself. It's because I do know that my aim is always to entertain, educate, and do a great job. And just because I fall short of that sometimes, doesn't mean I'm scared to try anyway, and that I'm scared to sort of receive, backlash. I was thinking about that when it came to the skyscraper thing. It was like, man, yes, like some of the criticism, stuff like that, that sucks. But ultimately, like this was a life-changing thing for me. It really was. I got to meet people from a world I knew nothing about. I got to go to Taiwan. I got to dangle off a fucking building, for God's sake. Like I got to push myself in ways outside of broadcasting. I got to, sit at dinner and listen to Alex Honnold pick Mark Rober's brain about NASA, and then pick Seth Rollins' brain about how he carbo loads before like major event. Like I got to be witness to incredible conversation. And so there is always something really positive to glean out of everything in this industry. And I think that's ultimately where I'm at. Like I can handle the backlash because I get to do a really cool freaking job. And that's just a part of it. And it comes with the territory, and it's totally fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinions. Everybody is.
You're working with Netflix now. Obviously, we talked about that. You also have USA Sports coming up with the for the WNBA season. Did either one of them have any issues about the dual roles? Like, was Netflix like, no, you can't do USA Sports, you're with us, or was USA Sports like, you can't do Netflix, you're going to be with us? Or both comfortable with you working with doing the two different jobs?
Yeah, both totally comfortable. Netflix knows that they don't have women's basketball yet. And Netflix was super into the idea of me staying at ESPN just to do women's basketball, right? Like they're my
Okay.
main dish. But Netflix was like, hey, we're a fan of the big three too. Like we would hate to be the reason that it breaks up. We love you on women's basketball coverage. We know how much value and how much you love it. And so, they've always been, and from the very beginning, which was also really enticing in making that move. Like we're Netflix, we're not territorial. We don't like hoard. We feel like we speak for ourselves, and like if you want to go do other things that you're passionate about, like we would never tell you that you can't, and so in USA, conversely, like they knew about Netflix because I had the Netflix job when they had approached me, and so they were super excited to sort of whittle out a role, understanding that like Netflix gets first right of refusal, and they of course get prime attention. And so it was really cool to be able to have an opportunity to do both, where I could still keep my foot in women's basketball and make it work with my Netflix schedule. But no, they were both super excited. I think they both understand what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Like if you like watching me on USA, maybe you'll come follow me on Netflix, and vice versa.
Did you discuss staying with ESPN for just women's basketball when going to Netflix as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was when I had talked to ESPN about leaving and that I was going to be, going to Netflix, it was absolutely thrown out there that like, hey, Netflix is cool with it if you guys are, the opportunity to maybe stay and just do women's basketball for you guys and really own that space, almost as like contract work. And I knew it was a total Hail Mary when I threw it out there, because that's not exactly how ESPN works,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't really, do contract work with people who used to be like, a pretty big part of their roster. But I really appreciated that ESPN even weighed it. And, they could have said no, like immediately, which I sort of expected that they would. And the fact that they sat with it and they tried to figure out if they could make it work. And I think just existentially, it just wasn't going to work for them. But I knew that going in, that there was a greater than good chance it would not happen, that if I wanted to stay in women's basketball, I'd have to seek opportunities elsewhere.
How do you think covering the WNBA for USA is going to be different from covering it for ESPN?
I don't really know, to be honest. And that's cool. Again, I'm in this new era of just building things from the ground up and sort of seeing what that looks like, being curious, trying things out. I'll be working with Renee Montgomery, who's a friend who I've known for years. And so that's going to be great. So we have an instant rapport. And I know how bullish USA is on women's basketball. They're like, this is our prime meet, right? This is our main event. This is the thing. They're pouring a lot of resources into it. They want it to be really good. And so, but I'm not really sure. We're still in the stages of A, trying to figure out if we're going to have a season, and B, just still in the stages of just seeing how we're going to put this together, what we find to be important. I do know that, and I think I can share this, that, USA Sports is going to have a pregame show, a halftime show, and a post-game show, which would be a little bit different than my time at ESPN, where we really didn't do too much post-game. And I know that USA is going to have, a premiere night where they have really big matchups, and they'll also have the playoffs. So I'll be doing, the first round and the finals with USA as well. So we're still building this thing from the ground up, but I think right now, foundationally, building the team is the most important thing, and that's what they're doing.
Do you think a CBA deal is going to get done before the season?
Oh, man. I was a lot more optimistic a couple months ago, I'd say, even a month ago. I reach out to sources. I ask how they think things are going. I feel like they're still just as far apart as they were a couple months ago, which is not great. I also think that there's a bit of a distraction with Unrivaled right now, and maybe things can get a little more honed in and focused once that season wraps. But yeah. I don't know. I mean, we are moving into critical time. We weren't so much in October or November, but now we're up against training camps are going to start at some point soon. There's only 2 free agents that are signed. I mean, there is once they do get a deal done, you're just going to see just a rapid assault of deals and moves. And so all of these things are sort of at their tipping points, like a powder keg, And so I'm hopeful, Brandon, because I really don't think anyone, not the league and not the players for sure, want a stoppage in play. It would be catastrophic is not the right word, but man, it would be a really big punch in the gut to something that is growing and expanding and has really caught fire. We do not want to lose the momentum. So I'm not overly optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll get something done.
Are you impressed with the way that the WNBA has grown, say in your time covering the sport, or did you see this coming all along?
I mean, I knew eventually, right? People always would try to compare the WNBA to the NBA, even though it's been around half as long. And these things take time, and women's sports is an investment. I think how rapid it happened was absolutely a surprise, right? I think you can see signs of growth, and that's all you want, right? Little signs of growth and okay, we're doing this. But this thing got shot out of a cannon. And I think it was so surprising to some people because college basketball has always been quite popular, right? Women's college basketball has always been pretty popular. The disconnect was, why doesn't anybody follow these same women that they love watching in college to the pros? If you love them so much in college, they just go to a league that's even more competitive and even better with even better talent. Why aren't you following them? And so it was sort of beating your head against a wall. And then all of a sudden it just happened, and it was oh, they are following them. Right. And there is all of this intrigue and they are appreciating women specifically where they're at. They're not comparing the women's game to men anymore. And so I think how quickly it happened was probably surprising to everybody. But the reason that you invest and plant seeds is that you hope at some point they'll blossom and they'll flower and they'll grow. And so we're certainly seeing that. So I'm not surprised that it's popular and growing in popularity. Maybe I'm surprised at how quickly it got there.
What was more surprising, the way Caitlin Clark's fame exploded or the reaction to Caitlin Clark's fame exploding?
I don't think it was surprising that Caitlin Clark's fame exploded. I mean, there was bubblings for a couple of years when she was in college, her freshman, sophomore year even. I think anytime somebody is trailblazing their play in a way that's like feels unique. She reminded me a lot of Steph Curry, right? It's not like Steph Curry revolutionized basketball, but he really revolutionized that position and what you expect to see from someone that looks like someone like him. And he revolutionized range. Maybe he's to blame for why everybody on earth shoots threes all the time. But so I think anytime someone sees something that looks different to them, they're like, whoa. And Caitlin Clark from college, like early on, was like, oh, she's different. Her ability to dish, her feistiness, right? Like how fiery she is, her range, like her competitiveness, all of that really, really stood out. I think what was surprising was that her success and her talent and who she was resonating with. Like, I think what was surprising was that she would be sort of co-opted as part of like a larger conversation of, social issues and race and like all of those things. Like that was surprising to me, even if I thought maybe at first it wouldn't be, right? Like at first I was like, yeah, I get it. There's always going to be sort of these conversations whenever you have someone who is in a space that doesn't necessarily look like they belong in that space, right? We all came up with Tiger, right? So like, but I suppose I'm surprised that like we're still here, like after a couple of years, I can't believe that we're still actually here. It feels like now that we have like tangible evidence of like what her pro career is going to look like and what kind of pro she's going to be, we could probably just make it more about the basketball because the basketball is so enthralling and to me is story enough. But no, I'm not surprised that she went next level. She's a next level talent. I mean, she's absolutely incredible.
How does the WNBA balance celebrating the star and talent that they have in Caitlin Clark while also dealing with that influx of toxic conversation that seems to have stemmed from Caitlin to no fault of her own?
Yeah, it's no fault of her own, and I think that's probably the frustrating part for her camp and the frustrating part for a lot of the women in general who, get compared to her or get accused of having ulterior motives against her. Like I think it's all of this conversation and discourse that is completely manufactured by people who have no idea, no knowledge, no understanding of how any of these women actually feel and are sort of projecting. And so I think when it comes to the NBA or the WNBA, I stand on like, don't overthink it. I do. I stand on like, celebrate Caitlin. You should celebrate Caitlin. You don't have to. I think with women in general, there's this idea that like, if you don't mention, if you sort of exceptionalize one woman, that you have to then like acknowledge every other woman in history that's come before her, or you're somehow disrespecting legacy, or you're not shining a bright enough light. Like, I think there's just this misconception that we can't exceptionalize women. And if you exceptionalize LeBron and you make him MVP, then like, this doesn't have to be Mean Girls. We don't have to like break off the crown and give every single little person a piece. But I also think that like, it's up to the league, it's up to broadcasters, it's up to media to continue to paint, or shine a light rather on what's important and the storylines that are important. And it's not just in let's show some love to the seventh player on the bench because we showed so much love to Caitlin. To me, it's just, again, keeping it simple. Focus on the main thing. What are the storylines? There are a million storylines, and it's lazy to every time Chicago and Indiana faces each other to just go Angel versus Caitlin. They can hate each other. There's just so much more meat on the bone, and we just can't be lazy in general. And I apply that to all sports. Don't be lazy. We don't always have to re-rack the conversation of LeBron versus Michael Jordan. Oh my God, there's just so many more conversations, higher level, insightful conversations that can be had. So let's see what we're doing, but also don't overthink it. Like if Caitlin Clark is just coming off a run of like 3 straight games where she scored 30, you don't have to go, we are dedicating a lot of time in this pregame show to Caitlin Clark. Should we just, for the sake of doing it, should we just show other people love? It's like, no, but like if there is other stories there, make sure that you're giving them a platform too. And I think that's really what it is. It's just like going case by case, having some nuance and saying, what is the story that we're trying to tell today? Not the story everyone wants us to tell, not the story from 3 weeks ago, not what we think the story will be in 6 months, but like, what's the story today? And like, how are we engaging people today?
Do you get to collect any royalty fees for the all the girl dad merchandise that's out there?
I don't. You know what's so interesting is here's a little inside story. A family member right after Girl Dad happened hits me up and is like, I I grabbed the trademark for Girl Dad for you. And I was like, no, ew, no, oh no, I am not trying to, ew, I don't want to no, that's not why I did this. I don't want to profit off this, like gross and yuck. And so I immediately made him get rid of it. He, rescinded the paperwork, whatever. When I look back on it, I wish I would have let him, only because I would have loved to give that IP to Vanessa. I would
Yeah.
have loved to be able to give that to her and her family because it was his words and I only relayed those words. And I would have loved to have been able to let her have a little bit more control over where that went. It has really blown up a way that I
Yeah.
was not expecting. And I do believe that it's like always so genuine and comes from a really good place when people throw it out there. I mean, the most surreal thing to me is like when people don't even know that I had anything to do with it. We were in a hair and makeup in Taiwan. And one of the climbers was like on a FaceTime with a climbing buddy. And he's like, we just found out we're having another daughter. I'm a girl dad, and I'm just chuckling as I'm getting my makeup, thinking like, wow, man, this thing has reached,
Yeah.
at this point, people don't even know where it came from, I think, like necessarily. It's just become such a part of the lexicon that they throw it out there. And so that's super cool. But if I could go back in time, I would let that family member keep that trademark so that I could have passed that on to Vanessa, because I was thinking about me and like, oh God, it feels so gross. It feels like profiting off tragedy. But if I had a little bit more foresight, I would have said, this gives the family a chance to own this IP a little bit more so that they could have steered it in the direction that they wanted to, considering that it came from Kobe.
Yeah, and even back then, you probably still couldn't have envisioned the movement and like just the amount of every single time I see somebody walking by with a girl dad hat, like I think back to that story that you told about Kobe, and I'm sure most people don't remember the origins of where it came from. But even as much as that video took off quickly, like you still couldn't have foreseen that it would have had this lasting of an impact.
No way. No way. And he took to his credit, he took the trademark out like the next day. So
Yeah.
of course, like I was like, he had the foresight that I didn't have. But no way did I think that it would
Yeah.
become, I just didn't know it would become a way that people, do baby announcements and like how people describe themselves. And I just didn't know it would take off the way that it did. But credit to social media. Sometimes social media is not a place you want to be. And sometimes social media can do really powerful, wonderful
Yeah.
things like amplify Girl Dad.
Yeah. You're from Atlanta. Are you a Falcons fan? Because it also seems like you have an interest with the Broncos.
Yeah, I'm not a Falcons fan. My whole family's from Denver, both
Okay.
sides. My sister was born there. They moved to Georgia and had me, but they brought the Broncos with them. And it was the
Okay.
only Colorado team they brought with them. And so then my parents adopted, the Braves and the Hawks and UGA football, but it was always the Broncos. So while they're the hometown team, like I have a love for them. I wish
Yeah.
nothing but for the best for them, unless they play the Broncos. That's not my team. Like I don't lose sleep over them. It's truly the Broncos for me, ride or die.
Yeah. So being from Atlanta and now rooting for Sean Payton, that's definitely an interesting dynamic.
Brutal. It's brutal, especially because sometimes he gets real cute. It's
Yeah.
real hard. Sometimes it's like he doesn't want to be likable. I'm like, Sean, do you want us to like you? I can't tell.
So is there anything do you have a Super Bowl pick, or is there a storyline that you're interested in with the Super Bowl? What kind of excites you with looking towards the what we have coming in a couple of weeks?
So I was at the last Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks. I was working for a regional network, Nesson at the time, covering the Patriots. And I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again in the interest of, I imagine your viewers haven't necessarily heard me say this. When you're covering the Super Bowl, they bring you down to the field before the game is over so that you're ready to go out onto the field when the game's over and get interviews and all that stuff. Somehow I lost media, and I'm wandering in the bowels of this stadium in Glendale. And I'm like, where the f am I? And I just kind of stumbled across this large group of people. And I was like, whatever. I could see the field. Like, I was like, I guess I'll just stand there. I'm wearing a radio piece in my ear that they had given you that was the live broadcast. The radio was ahead of the TV. So the TV's up there and the radio's in my ear. And so it was Curse, right? Curse makes that catch. And like, I realized later on, I am standing with Patriots family. This is the family members that are going to run on the field and greet their loved ones. And so they start losing it. Oh my God. Oh guys, like it's, it's David Tyree 2.0. Oh my God, it's happening again. How can this happen? And they're freaking out. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of loving it. Like, I was a Patriots hater. I'm a Broncos fan, right? I'm like a Patriots hater. So I'm like, and the Seahawks had like beat the dog shit out of my Broncos, but I was like, whatever, go Seahawks. And then all of a sudden in my ear, I hear, he throws a pick and he throws a pick. And I just start yelling, oh my God, he threw a pick. He threw a pick. And it hadn't come across the TV yet. And everyone turns and looked at me and they're like, what? And I was like, look. And here it goes. He throws the pick. Everyone goes nuts. Like, people are hugging me. Like I did something. Everyone's like losing it. And they, of course, ultimately win the game. And so I just have such fond memories of like how quickly things can swing.
Yeah.
Like I was there to witness it, how quickly things can swing in a Super Bowl. And it's one of my great memories of covering sports. And so I'm super excited that the Seahawks get another crack at the Patriots. I want it for my girl, Mina. I do, with my prediction, ultimately think it's going to be the Seahawks, just because I think they're the most complete team. But for the Patriots to be in the Super Bowl is absurd. Now, do I think they're in the Super Bowl a little bit because of what happened to the Broncos? A little bit. Not going to be a hater. We had opportunities to win that game. We did not have our starting quarterback. But I do think that the Seahawks are, when I looked at that last game, even before the Snowmageddon part, those 7 points from the Patriots came from a Broncos gimme. And against that Seahawks defense, I don't know how easy it'll be to score. And the Seahawks offense is much more capable of scoring than the Broncos was. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks in this one. Let's see. I'll say 31-23.
Elle, you were great. Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Brandon.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to chat it out. I'm like, I want an opportunity to talk through like what happened in the event. This is the first time I'm doing it. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate all the candor. It was great.
Always do. Like, listen, I'm going to be the first one to be like, so appreciate you so much. And anytime you want to chat again, let me know.
Awesome. Will do. Okay. That is Elle Duncan. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.